Did you come to make a movie on a story that is so well known on one side of the world, but unknown to, I guess, most of the world? I mean, we've all seen biblical epics, and this, in its own way, is a counter to that. But I was completely unfamiliar with the story until I saw the film. So give us a sense a little bit about how you come to make this and why.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having us today. Really appreciate it, and thanks to Deadline and everyone involved. So your question kind of answers the question itself. Lady Fatima, because the world at large aren't very familiar with her, we felt it was a necessity to make a film about her. We've done other projects in the past. I mean, Lady Fatima herself is someone I and the team hold dearly in our hearts. She's a historical sage, a leader figure for us, full of wisdom and teachings. And we felt that it was a huge shame that the world are not familiar with her story. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that she is one of the, if not the most influential historical Arabian character who's influenced history in that region and at the world at large. I mean, of course, the Prophet Muhammad himself is known to be of the greatest influences, but his daughter alongside him throughout his whole journey, she was there. And in particular, her story that we are portraying in this film, it's a very fascinating and rich story. And we believe the lady herself is a figure that no matter which background you're from, which religious background or non-religious background or country or whatnot, you can resonate with the lady and you can learn a great deal from her and her life.
Well, this is, we watch these power struggles, and as usual, they mostly involve men. So tell us a little more specifically her role in determining how the words and influence of her father would guide this religion, because we're seeing it at its very inception. So if you can, draw us out a little bit on what she did, since they didn't get a chance to see the trailer, and what made her so exceptional.
I'll take this one as well. Yeah, lovely. So, I mean, at the time of Lady Fatima, it was a very dark period in history. People who know about that time in history know that it was a region of tribe warfare, a very vicious, very monstrous time in history. One point that I like to bring to just paint a picture of the world that Lady Fatima lived in was there was a common practice at the time to bury your daughter alive. So if you had a daughter at that time period, it was sort of seen as a disgrace in a way, and they had this tribal mentality of if the daughter would be, for example, kidnapped or raped or something of that sort, the tribe would be put into shame. They had this old sort of barbaric mindset. So it was very common practice to bury your daughter alive, and Lady Fatima is living in that very time period. So you can already imagine as a woman what it was like living in that era. And she was with her father, the Prophet, who obviously set out to rectify the affairs of the community. I mean, that very practice was abolished through their efforts, as well as many other efforts. He unified the people to come together and sort of combating this tribal mentality. But again, it's the Prophet. His story is quite well known, but not the lady. And she was a pinnacle figure in standing up against oppression. If I was to summarize the lady in one sentence, it would be the selfless lady, because she gave up everything to stand up against oppression. Not going too much into the technicalities, but the Prophet at that time had a lot of enemies due to his standing up against these things. And people in their tribal mentality were very much after power, very much wanting their tribe to reign over, and that continued on until after the Prophet's death. And that's when we really start to see the lady shine, because the Prophet's gone from the community. He's established a lot of good brought the community together and brought this sort of harmonious community vibe across the region. And once he's gone, you have all sorts of people in play trying to take back what was theirs, you could say. And the lady there, alongside her husband, Imam Ali, and her two children, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, they're sort of the what remains of the Prophet. In the film, as they call it, the light of God on earth. This is the Holy Family, with the lady being the prime figure. And they have a monstrous task to carry on that representation of the Prophet. And they're sort of bombarded with a lot of trials, a lot of difficulties. And the lady in particular suffers greatly at the hands of many people who they want things to go back to how it was before. You know, their tribe reigning over another tribe, warfare, and all sorts of things, and burying daughters alive if they could. But she didn't accept that. She never contemplated accepting it, and she was willing to give her life for this, as well as her family's life. And I mean, I don't want to go into the plot. Hopefully, the film will reveal all the details. But she suffers greatly, and I've seen the film numerous times through production. And I know this story, I've known it for a long time. But when I watch what happens to the lady, I tear up every time. It's something really heartbreaking.
Well, her husband, we see in early tribal clashes, is a most gifted warrior, the best one of all. And yet he heeds the advice of his father-in-law and doesn't fight back. Talk a little bit about that.
I think that's a very interesting point, Mike, actually. Many people who don't know the story have criticized this particular point, not knowing exactly why Imam Ali didn't fight back. The story, as you rightly touched upon, explains exactly why and shows why. And that's, you know, one of the reasons why we actually went into this production, just to heed some of the misconceptions out there and to tell the story in a correct fashion, if you like, or factually correct, which is the word I'm looking for. A lot of people don't know the story 100%. There are a lot of questions out there. And this is, we're talking within the wider Muslim community, let alone the Western media, which is primarily where this film is aimed for. So we plan to tackle all these questions, which is a perfect one you've just asked. And yes, he heeds, he does what the Prophet essentially asks him to do. It was a very difficult job for any person to do, you know, but nevertheless, Imam Ali held his ground, but made it known at the same time to the oppressors that, by the way, you know, had this not been told, or had I not been asked to be patient, you know, some of these incidents that happen in the film that everyone will see would have never happened. He was a very patient man, as well as a warrior.
And I remember when The Passion of the Christ came out, several studios didn't want to distribute it, and it went on to become, you know, the highest grossing independent film for a long time. And for Catholics like myself, it was a very moving document. I mean, extremely moving to me. Who is this movie made for?
Very interesting question. You know, touching upon the Passion of Christ, I myself am not a Catholic, but I was moved. Many people that I know that are not of the Catholic faith were also moved. And I think this is what we were aiming here with the story of the lady. I mean, look, we wanted people to see her story, understand, and maybe move in the same way. You know, understand her story and feel her struggle. And then they can do with that what each individual wanted to do with it, you know. And our film doesn't push anything onto anyone. It merely tells a story of somebody that was so important to 2 billion people. Must be told. I mean, nowadays we have stories on all sorts of prophets from all sorts of faiths, Buddha and so forth, and they've all been epic films. Yet we haven't had the story of the lady, and it really, we felt so strongly about it. Maybe I think the fact that if people see it and walk out with the same feeling of Muslim faith and non-Muslim faith, You know, that's very important. Our film wasn't made for the Muslim faith. It was made for the Western media. We wanted your average day person from all over the world to see it and recognize it. Hence it was done in English. I think if we managed to get people walking out of the theaters feeling like they did with the Passion of Christ, or maybe more emotional, I think we would have been, or we would definitely consider it a success.